Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott McKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
All right, let's get cracking. Thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk Podcast, the number one industrial and manufacturing-related podcast in the universe that celebrates you, the industrial, the manufacturing professionals, the companies that get it done. You are bold, you are brave, you dare greatly, you innovate, you're changing the world and you're changing lives. Thank you very much for what you do. That's why we celebrate you on this particular podcast, because you deserve it. You're making my life better. Absolutely. All right, another great interview. Nicola Fraser, that's N-I-K-K-I. Her real name is Nicola, but everybody calls her Nikki, and I give you permission to call her Nikki as well. But make sure you spell it N-I-K-K-N-I-K-K-I. Nextkey Services is the company, and we're talking risk management. She brings, I'm telling you, man, she brings the passion with that. You're saying to yourself, Scott, man, it's risk management. Nobody wants to talk about risk management. Yeah, you need to talk about risk management. That segues into this particular. Once again, I've had a gazillion conversations with many industry and manufacturing professionals, and the trends are retaining talent, right? Managing risk, building a wall around it, getting rid of it, figuring out those strategies, saving money, making money to create a business of resiliency, because you need to survive, you need to rebuild, and you need to prosper. No doubt, put that in the bank. You need to do it because we depend on you. We depend on you in a big and very important way. And Nikki brings, that expertise. She's got mad freaking skills. And not only that, she makes the subject of risk management that nobody likes to talk about. Nobody. Don't like talking about it. Interesting, entertaining, and you'll get it because the interview's absolutely fantastic. All right, a couple of things. One, I just did a quick little, about a minute 30 video, put it out there on LinkedIn, and it's really specific around repurposing content, industrial content, your industrial content, repurposing it, and some of the strategies, some of the hacks that I want to just share with you real quick. One hack, and it's a real powerful hack, and we've got other hacks, and we'll talk about it, and it's out there on the Industrial Academy too, as we expand upon it, is you have this sort of treasure trove of content that you have created over, let's say, a year. Let's give it maybe a little longer, but let's say a year. And it's a blog. It's dusty. The content might still be relevant. It maybe with a couple of tweaks here and there, the content can be relevant. You can, once again, adjust it for today, recraft it, right? And then resubmit it. But the real hack is take that blog, take that report, and put it into a podcast. Case in point, you reach out to me, you go to industrialtalk.com, you say, contact me. Hey, Scott, we want to do a podcast. And what that does is that you're saying, okay, I've got a blog. And we did a blog on whatever X. I could take that blog and we can have a podcast, which then creates new content for that blog, dusts it off, brings out the human element, and it makes it come alive, right? That's what this podcast does, and it allows that blog to come alive. The best part about it, it doesn't stop there. We can then take that blog or blogs, series, whatever it might be, and begin to chop it up into quality content segments. So, you could create a video here, and it's 2 minutes about the interview. It's great, and it touches upon a point. And then maybe down the road a little bit on the interview, there's another little segment of the interview in video. Boom. You slice that out. Now you're creating multiple contents based off of that one blog. You've already released that blog again. Now you've created a podcast around that blog and the information. And especially today, it has value. So I want you to, and I'm challenging you to think about your content, your legacy content, whatever, past content, and don't say that it's dead. Don't. Let's leverage that. Reach out to me, industrialtalk.com. Let's get it on a podcast. Let's talk a little bit about it. And that goes for reports as well, right? Let's say you get a report. The report's great. I'm up in the, top quartile, whatever it might be, whatever the report or the results of that report might be. We highlight that as well and just talk about it. And again, I cannot reiterate the amount of human element that comes out as a result of these conversations. It comes alive. Now, you've got a year's worth of content all in one, just quick little podcasts, information. Make it a series. So you get the picture. Reach out, industrialtalk.com. Contact me. Let's talk a little bit about how we can repurpose your blogs and repurpose your reports and repurpose other things, because it's important, especially today. On to the interview. She's in the hot seat, the Industrial Talk hot seat. Nicola Fraser, that's Fraser, Nextkey Services. We're talking risk management. Once again, she has got a lot of spunk to her. So enjoy the conversation. Nikki, welcome to the Industrial Talk podcast. Absolute honor to be able to have you on, sharing your insights and wisdom for the listeners of the Industrial Talk podcast. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me, Scott. Delighted to be here.
I like it, man. We are having a great listeners. We were having a great conversations offline. She's a spark plug. Got a lot of passion out there, and I love it. For the listeners now, give us a little 411 on who you are and why you're such an incredible professional. Let's check out your stat card, too. And she's pretty active out there on LinkedIn, too. She's got it going on.
Thanks, Scott. Before I jump into what I do, I thought it would be helpful to share with a little bit about who I am. I was born and raised in Ireland, so a feisty Irish woman kind of comes to mind.
When Irish is all right, go.
I moved to the U.S. as 16 to live with my dad, so I'm the eldest.
Whoa. You're only 21. How did you lose that accent? You're welcome.
Thank you, Scott.
Yes, absolutely. Claps come this way.
Yes.
No, how did you lose your accent? Now, if you go back to Ireland, does it sort of creep in?
When I'm around my family, it definitely comes out, and especially after a few adult beverages.
See, I can hear a little.
It's funny.
All right, high beer factor here, baby. All right.
But yeah, high school. I think high school, you just in the back of your conscious. My dad's like, you don't practice enough in the mirror.
Really? So your dad wanted you to lose the accent?
No, keep it.
Because
he heard it slip away. He said, don't lose it.
I have to support your dad.
Yeah. No, it's funny. But I'm married, 3 kids. We just recently relocated from New York to Charlotte, North Carolina. And we're a global family. So I grew up in Ireland. My husband grew up in South Africa, and his parents are in New Zealand. So we've got family throughout Europe, New Zealand, South Africa, the U.S. So yeah, very much an international family. So feeling a little stuck right now.
I was going to say this can't be good.
See each other. Yeah, it's hard, but we had already mastered WhatsApp and Facebook or FaceTime and everything else. So so that's definitely good. It just ramped it up.
Because you're a global family now, what was in the pre-virus world that you lived in? Did you go down to South Africa and New Zealand? Did you make that a point of being able to do that sort of an annual journey?
Yeah, I wish. We have 3 young kids, so it's been a little hard in recent time. We went to South Africa a few years ago for my sister-in-law's wedding. They now live in London, so we've since been in London to visit them. And my in-laws have retired, and they're still well able to travel. And they usually take a couple of months and travel around the world and spend time with us. So we've been very fortunate that the combination of a lot of European travel and others traveling have brought us all together. So.
And now you're living the dream of COVID.
Yeah. Is that what we call it? A dream? I guess we're healthy.
2020's been a dream, baby.
We're both healthy, so I guess we'll take that, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. The glass is always refillable, Scott.
It is. Thank you very much. I am a new person because of you, Nikki.
The smarty pants. Probably shift over more from a professional perspective. I'm a Fortune 50 executive, finance expert, CPA. I've lived through the Great Recession, a time at Fannie Mae, working through finance with Treasury. I've spent years working in public accounting, serving diverse clients also. And now I'm managing partner of Nextkey Services, which is a firm that I recently founded a couple of years ago. And I do consulting for small, medium-sized companies, and in the finance, risk management. And I also am looking to expand to serve on board of directors as part of that effort. And then I've also, as I diversify my portfolio, I've also expanded into real estate investing, and I have built up a portfolio of single-family homes. So I've been a bit busy.
So really, the reality of this conversation is that she's got mad street cred when it comes to pretty much anything finance, risk management, everything else. I feel very insecure now, Nikki.
Oh, don't stop.
Stop.
Baloney.
Well, there's
my backdrop. Call it.
Yeah, absolutely. I gotta reset this because don't mind me. There we go. I have to reset my backdrop because apparently that resets itself. Anyway, so now let's talk a little bit about it. And one of the areas that I think there's a major gap that exists just for especially now. And the reason for that is, one, I think there's a good conversation to be had around risk management, especially now. Pre-virus, don't come talking to me about risk management. I don't even want to. I don't want to talk about it. Now, I think that there is a real interest in having that conversation. And because I didn't want to talk about it, I still don't know what to do today. Can you sort of expand upon that?
Risk management is it's hard. It's a difficult conversation. There's a very small component of it that's very manageable with processes, but there's the strategic risk management, and then there's the external factors that come into play that you have to assess from a risk management too. But there's an emotional tie to this. If you're asking someone who's developed something, what could go wrong? They're like, well, I'm very proud of my work. Nothing will go wrong. Yeah. It's good, right? Nothing will go wrong with my process. There's nothing that can happen. So you have to take people to a very dark place to identify the risks.
It's true.
And that's hard. That's hard. Right?
I'll be the first to admit that. Don't take me to those dark places. I have a hard enough time, man. I just want to move forward and life's good and skip on through life. But you have to have those
when things aren't going well, right? There's no need to go to those dark places for that. Right. The human spirit doesn't want to go there. So
it's true, but that's the human condition too, as well, right? I mean, nobody really says, "Hey, come on, take me on that journey to Bluesville."
Yes. But as part of financial reform, the large banks have to do a capital stress testing, and that has to be submitted to the Fed annually. So during my time at JP Morgan, I was very involved in leading that effort. And you have to take people through scenarios and assumptions that are just unrealistic in their mind. I've worked in this industry for 30 years. I've never seen anything like this. Well, we still have to go through. So, but what if? And it's hard. It's hard to go through that and do it. But I think in the financial service space, especially the larger banks, they were forced to do that coming out of the Great Recession of 2008. So now it's a matter of, okay, we're all living through this pandemic. Everybody is doing risk management. Just to go to the grocery store, you're doing risk management. It's that simple. You're assessing, okay, do I use a cart? How do I clean that cart? What do I put on my hands? Do I need to put anything? Do I get a mask big enough that fits? Right?
But you're absolutely right. Now, in the case of that, I mean, come on. Nobody in their business continuity plan, I don't think anybody said, hey, what happens if there's a global pandemic and everything shuts down? I guarantee you, there might have been maybe 3 companies in the globe doing that. I don't know. I'm just, how do institutions deal with that? Because there's a lot of stress out there right now, and it revolves around, your typical financial health. Yeah. How do institutions deal with that, Nikki?
Deal with not having a risk.
It's crazy out there. Pre-virus, you sort of had a decent feel and, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
All bets are off in this environment.
So you got to go back to basics, right?
Yeah.
Right? Things get complicated and messy, and we as humans make them complicated and messy. So
Yeah.
to me, it's fundamental, and this is kind of where you pull in the finance side also with the risk management. It's, well, what do I have to do? How do I stop my expenses? You go through simple things, assessing those expenses. How can I maintain my revenues? What customers are going to drop off? How can I assess the risk to my employees? Health and safety is number one. That has to be number one if your employees going through a pandemic. So it's taking your structure that you may or may not have. If you don't have one, it's a great time to put something in place to say, what are all our risks? Let's just brainstorm our risks. We can't solve and mitigate every risk. You can't do that in life. It's just not possible. But how can you reduce that risk? How can you live with that risk and say, okay, I have a higher return if we go down this route. Can we handle that risk? And that's what it's about. And once you start changing that mindset around how you think about it, it becomes less of a chore or less of an ugly thing.
So if I put my business cap on, what do you recommend to listeners? I mean, like, once again, this is going to be new. What sort of, so you're saying, hey, let's sit down in a room, let's start looking at what's step one.
Step one is, what's our strategy in this current environment to survive as a business?
I love it.
Right? And then you start there and say, okay, with that strategy, hey, our old model of assessing risk doesn't work if we had one. We have to now look at this new strategy as if we're a new business and say, okay, what are the risks here? Is it access to capital? Is it the health and safety of employees? Are they exposed, or is your business, everything is remote and it's reduced, right? So depending upon the nature, you identify the risks associated with that strategy, and then you kind of go through, okay, well, what are processes we can put in place to mitigate or reduce some, and then what are things that we have to live with? So you kind of, at the end of the day, you move forward with some level of risk you're taking on.
Yeah, and I would imagine the conversation, so you have internal and external risks, and then you have the risks more external in the case of the COVID. Now is the time for, and once again, to your point, there's an opportunity for resiliency. Now everybody will have a sort of a continuity plan that includes the two-finger death punch of COVID or some other thing to come back and say, okay, we're ready. We're resilient.
Yeah.
See, it's an interesting time. But the reality is that you have to do that.
Yeah, and you have to build up your processes and your controls to reduce the risks of those, that strategy. But everything has to tie back to your new strategy, because no matter what business you're in, your strategy of your business shifted in some shape or form. It could be massive, it could be small. And then in that strategy, what are your risks? What are the processes that need to be adjusted and built towards it? And there is nothing sexy about building processes. I get it. And putting controls in place.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the whole, if you've got a moment to do that, now's the time to do it. So you can thrive as things start to pick up.
Yeah.
Right? But if you don't have that foundation, it's really hard.
See, that means you're talking about creating scenarios. You're doing a lot of what if conversations too.
Yeah.
You've got the realities. It's like, we're struggling here with cash. We better find some, so an LC or something. We need that. Okay, good. And that'll help us deal with X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But then in this world, then all of a sudden you've got to be creative enough to say, what if? Here's a scenario. What do we do if this scenario? No matter how ridiculous it might be.
Absolutely. And that's where it's hard, right? That's where, back to earlier, those are the hard conversations to have. But you also have to maintain that process that you put in place of doing scenarios. So you might say, okay, this is our new strategy. We've put, this is our budget, our financial plan. This is how we're going to access capital. This is our daily cash approach, how we're going to manage our cash flows. And you establish that for your business. But then the reality is, you have to be able to, that has to evolve with the business. And how is that, how the processes that you put in place, the metrics that you're looking at to help manage those risks. And are those metrics are they more forward looking, or are they all looking backwards? And how do you have the balance of both? so you can look around corners a little bit.
See, that's interesting, because one of the challenges that I always had when I was running businesses is that my receivables or my financials were always behind me.
Yeah.
And they were behind me of, hey, how did I do 45 days? She's like, well, I can't make any decisions.
Those accountants.
Wow, we stink. Let's try not to stink that much.
And we're halfway through the next quarter, so it's really hard to react to it, right? Yeah.
So part of that, I would imagine, I would love to be able to compress that time. To be able to have,
need full financials, right?
Yeah.
What about a daily cash balance? Like, you're looking, here are critical accounts. What's our expected activity? And maybe you have to create daily reporting for your cash account. And maybe you have to create multiple scenarios of, there's options of accessing various different types of capital. Some of those may come through, some may not. Those could be just your scenario plans, right? On the costs associated with the different types of capital. So but you have to keep that mentality of, yes, there's a plan that needs to be put in place around your strategy that everybody's held accountable for, but also the scenarios and the range of scenarios. And is important.
Do you find that in, let's say, I mean, I'm always a big advocate of just trying to identify the low-hanging fruit first.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's easy. Less
80-20.
resistance. It's easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then being able to refine this risk management plan. I'd always focus in on, when we start talking about the strategies to survive, I guarantee you I would look at that, and that. I see this, I recognize it, but those are the 3 points that I need to constantly look at.
Yeah, you have to, because if you're trying to look at too many metrics or manage too much, it's just going to get lost. It's noise, right? Yeah. And depending if you're from in a CEO perspective or a board perspective, it's at a tighter number of metrics, right? But maybe if the organization's larger and there's different people running different products, they're going to be in the weeds on metrics around one particular product that they're responsible for, versus further up the chain, they might be just looking at 2 metrics about that product.
Yeah,
right?
See, this is what's interesting in this world, and I guarantee you, fortunately, I'm in a good position where I don't have to deal with all these firefights. This 5-alarm fire here, 5-alarm here. Yeah. Because my business one day was great. Next day, I lost 50% as a result of this COVID, like a switch.
Yeah.
I'm not in a position at this point in time. I just see fire everywhere. And to be able to cut through that chaotic mess would be just ideal. I would imagine, for me, if somebody came in and said, look here, do that. And then they say, okay, I got it. I'll do that, I got it. And then be able to then work it out.
It's like because you're looking at the whole mountain, right? And the whole mountain is just so overwhelming. Oh my gosh, how am I going to get up to the top of this mountain? I don't have to go to the top today. I just need to make it up one aspect, part of it, right? So, and I think that's how you achieve those goals, right? Just
you have to. I mean, Nikki, we've all been there where it's so overwhelming. And then it's so overwhelming to a point where I can't move because I don't know where to move or how to move or what it is. And some of the things that I've been listening to leaders like you and others, move. It might just be an inch today.
Just get up and move. Exactly.
Move. And that is a success. And that's the encouragement, because when I always talk about risk management, that means get in a room, start talking about it. Yeah. And then your whole world is burning, right?
Yeah. You're like, never mind. Never mind.
I don't have time for that. So I like that incremental approach. I think we can sort of.
And like if you just pause, if you just pause for a few moments and you say, okay, what are my main 5 risks with my shift in my business? Yeah. That's it. Okay. What does everybody think? Those are the top 5? Okay. How do we stay on top of that? How often do we have to stay on top of that? Right? And you just cut it down to those simple ways. Yeah. Again, complexity can get in the way. We've got to keep things simple. And then it doesn't have to be some fancy report, 30 pages long and
See,
simple.
Boy, you just bring up a good point. See, I noticed that you were with Deloitte at one point in time in your
Yes.
career.
Yes.
If a consulting, I was with PricewaterhouseCoopers. If a consulting company can make it complex, they will. and I love simplicity. I love the fact that you said that. And I think that resonates well with sort of people that are not that way.
Well, because it can be too intimidating too if we keep it too complex. And then to your point, it becomes that, thanks for coming in and providing this. Let me just put it on the shelf.
It does.
And it checks a box. Okay, I did my risk management assessment for the year. It's on the shelf. Well, that's not ingrained in the culture of the company, right? So that you can feel it and say, okay, wait. Like if you stop thinking about it and go, okay, well, we can make a 25% return on this. Okay, that's pretty good. Yeah. Well, we could do better if we did this. Okay, does that make sense? Are we okay with that risk?
Yeah. See?
Right. And then it becomes ingrained in the conversation around your strategy, around your products, around your innovation. Folks are moving forward with that in mind.
I love that. Because I just know, and I've heard a lot of people, my world is on fire.
Yeah.
How do I move through that, forest of fire and make it? I like it. Now, tell me a little bit about KPIs. Now, we have to track it. We have to, let's say we make it simple, 5 points, boom, boom, boom. And then you have that conversation like, that's good. This is red. This is yellow. That's green. We want to be in green, and whatever the dashboard is.
Whatever the fancy dashboard. First of all, it's great news. You've got a dashboard.
You've got a dashboard. It's
got a dashboard. You're ahead of the game.
Green. I'm good.
KPIs, your key performance indicators, right? A lot of them, to your point earlier around financial statements, they're 45 days later. You're looking at it. That's great. And you need some historical numbers. Your key performance indicators are not a full set of financials. They are a mixture of maybe some key operating. It could be your cash balance. It depends where your focus is. What's your issue? But you don't want to change them up every week. But you do want to consider and say, okay, as the business evolves, the strategy evolves, what are the key metrics that we need to look at to be able to, at that high level, just be in touch and make shifts in strategy and execution, make decisions. And if those KPIs are both kind of looking back, oh, crikey, this is what we did last month, that wasn't the best move. It was also maybe giving you a key indicator of, this is a leading indicator. Yeah. It's historical, but it's a leading indicator of what's to come.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, wait, the inventory is increasing. The work in progress inventory is not increasing. It's just the raw inventory. Wait, what's going on? Right. So that's slowing down so it's a leading indicator of potential sales or orders. Right. So those kind of things that you want to look for as you dig into it. But you don't want it to be overwhelmed. Like 50 KPIs is not realistic.
I get
it's not helpful.
No, it's not. And I guarantee you, if I remember, and we talked about this briefly, cash flow is king for me.
And queen.
Queen. Cash flow is genetically neutral. It's everything, And
everything
so
there.
It is. It's like, I love the cash focus. I remember, just FYI. So I'm going through my master's program, whatever. And we talk about, you take the accounting, and it's always, your typical accounting approach. And then somebody would throw in, what about cash flow, right? What about cash flow? And then all of a sudden it's like, I don't know. I don't get cash flow. Live cash flow. Then all of a sudden you realize how cash flow is genetically neutral, but very important.
Oh, so important, especially in these times, because you don't know what's going to come, right? I think and again, when times are good, cash keeps coming, and then we get comfortable and we assume it's going to continue. And whoa, that's not the case. We got to build up those reserves. We got to be prepared for the the unknowns.
And that's all a part of that. That's all a part of it.
It's all part of you.
Yeah. What is a good reserve?
Well, and that's part of your risk management. That's part of your strategy. Like, it's kind of saying, well, what are we comfortable with? What risk do we want to take? Right? Is it that we don't have that much cash, but we have access to a line of credit? How expensive is that line of credit? Right?
See, you can't help but dig deep. You can't help but pull the little. Keep it simple. However, pull on this string and then the sweater starts falling apart, and you're just like,
no, this is knitting the sweater together. Scott.
Okay.
These are all your different options, like when you talk about all the multiple scenarios, and making sure that you have scenarios to think about. Those push you into different ways of potentially executing your strategy. So I don't think those are bad thoughts or bad things to go through. At the end of the day, you line up your strategy and you move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we got to wrap this up. Nikki Fraser is her name. The company is Nextkey Services. Check out her LinkedIn stat card. It's impressive. Once again, I feel so insignificant. I will never compare my stat card with her stat card. You should just reach out
Stop
to her.
it.
Trust me. Oh, no. Hell no. I'm not going to stop it. Anyway, reach out to her because she gets it. All right. Nikki, thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk podcast. You were absolutely stunning.
Thank you for having me. It's great, Scott.
All right, listeners, stay tuned. We're going to be wrapping it up on the other side, and do not go away because I'll know when you go away. So stay tuned.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
All right. Again, thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk podcast. Really, really am honored that you've joined. Now, once again, 2 words, Nikki Fraser, Nikki. She got Matt's stat card out there on LinkedIn. Nextkey Services is the company. And I'm just going to reiterate this. You need to deal with your risk management, because you got to survive, you got to rebuild, you've got to prosper. We depend on you industrial, you manufacturing companies. We depend on you, especially today. Figure that out. A component, manage the risk. Reach out to Nikki because she's got answers for you. You need answers because, once again, we're all about collaborating. We've got to collaborate. We've got to, not just internally, but externally, we got to collaborate with people who have answers. I don't have the answers. I talk to a lot of people with answers, but I don't have answers. But you also have to innovate, not just from a technology point of view, but it is important. But how do you innovate from a business model perspective? How do you innovate from a human retention perspective? All of that good stuff. You need to innovate, and you need to do it really quickly. The last one is, of course, educate. You got to educate. This stuff, you got to make sure that you're getting the latest and greatest with a sense of speed. All right, wrap it up. You know what we're going to be doing. Be bold, be brave, dare greatly, change the world. That's what we're all about. Interview coming your way shortly.